Is the Auto Ordnance M1 carbine hunting rifle, will it be prohibited as according to this amendment?
I believe that is on the list, but I would have to check to be entirely sure. It should be
check.
in the M1 carbine section.
I can assure you they're on the list. I'm just asking you to confirm it.
Yeah, so the firearm you mentioned, I believe, is the Auto Ordnance M1 carbine, and that appears on the list of Schedule 2 at paragraph 81, subparagraph F.
Good. Yes, I knew that as well. Let's go on to the next one. The Ruger number 1 hunting firearm. Is that firearm going to be added to the prohibited list if legislation C-21 passes with amendments?
The Ruger number 1 already appears in Schedule 1, and it's been on that list since May of 2020. So there's nothing new
so it will
coming
be
from C-21.
Yeah.
It's just being repeated in the schedule as opposed to being in the regulations. However, I would also point out that it's only those versions of the Ruger number 1 rifle which are chambered for a caliber which is capable of producing 10,000 joules of energy or more. It's listed in paragraph 95 of the existing regulations and of the proposed Schedule 1. So ordinary with calibers.
I have to keep moving. I know some of my colleagues want to ask questions today too, so I'm going to try and make the answers more concise. The fact of the matter is that the Ruger number 1 is a hunting rifle, and it now will be prohibited.
The question, as I understood it to be, was about the Ruger number 1 rifle and whether it was prohibited. And my answer is that some Ruger number 1 rifles are prohibited, in particular those ones which are chambered for a caliber which is capable of producing 10,000 joules of energy or more. Versions of the Ruger number 1 rifle which are chambered for ordinary hunting calibers of the type that someone would use in Canada for hunting deer or moose, the version of the Ruger number 1 chambered for those calibers would not be prohibited. And in general, if it would be non-restricted.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. The hunting rifle, the Wesley Richards model 1897, is that firearm prohibited as a result of this legislation and associated amendments?
For that particular rifle, whether it's prohibited or not depends on the caliber it's chambered for. If that particular rifle is available in large African big game calibers, and some of which will exceed 10,000 joules, those versions of the rifle would be prohibited. Versions of it chambered for ordinary hunting calibers would not be prohibited. And I would further point out that this is no change from May of 2020.
And I just would acknowledge, and you would, sorry, I won't ask what you would say. I'll just say what I say. That is a hunting rifle, and it now will be prohibited as a result of the legislation. I'll go on to the next.
Only those versions which produce.
But it's still a hunting rifle that will be prohibited.
The Wesley Richards rifle is available in calibers which exceed 10,000 joules of energy. Those versions would be prohibited. Versions which are chambered for ordinary hunting calibers would not be prohibited, and in general would be non-restricted.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Let's go on to the next hunting firearm, the Winchester Model 54. Will that be prohibited as a result of the passing of C-21 and associated amendments?
The Winchester Model 54 is not on any of the schedules. There is the potential for it to be impacted by the Evergreen Clause, however.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. The next hunting firearm, the Parker breech-loading shotgun. Is that going to be included in the prohibited list based on the passing of C-21 and associated amendments?
The Parker is a brand name, and they make a variety of shotguns. And as was the case with the other firearms you mentioned, some of them are available in large calibers which exceed 10,000 joules energy. Those versions would be prohibited. In the case of the Parker, which is a shotgun, it's more likely that the shotgun would be available in 8 gauge. And with a barrel of that size, it would exceed 20 millimeters and be prohibited for that reason. But Parker shotguns, which are chambered for ordinary hunting calibers like 10 gauge or 12 gauge or 20 gauge, etc., would be unaffected and would remain non-restricted.
Once again, though, another hunting firearm being included in the prohibition list. Another question, the Concari Farquharson 4 shotgun, will it be included as a result of the passing of C-21 and associated amendments?
It's the same situation where only those which are equipped with a barrel bigger than 10 gauge, so 8 gauge being the most common, which would exceed 20 millimeters and fall within the already existing paragraph 96 that's been there since 2020. So most of the shotguns would be unaffected, but the high energy or the large caliber ones would.
So once again, another hunting firearm being included.
It is a hunting firearm, but it's only prohibited in certain limited circumstances.
Yeah, still a hunting firearm, though. Let's go to the next one, the NX-18, and it's a hunting rifle. I have an image of it right in front of me. It's actually a automatic or semi-automatic shotgun. It's a 410. Will it be? It's a hunting shotgun. Most of us have used 410s for grouse hunting, etc. Would the NX-18 semi-automatic 410 shotgun be included as a result of the passing of C-21 and associated amendments?
And again, I have to point out, I don't have every make and model memorized. I don't recall whether that shotgun has a detachable magazine or a fixed magazine. If it has a fixed magazine, it's unaffected. If it has a detachable magazine, it might be, but I'd need to look up the particulars for that particular shotgun.
But certainly has the capability, I think, and that's what's concerning many Canadians watching today. If it has the capability of having a detachable magazine, they will be included in paragraph G of G4.
Well, detachable magazines for shotguns is relatively uncommon even these days. So it's more likely that a shotgun that's designed for hunting would have a tubular fixed magazine and therefore would be unaffected.
The thing is, though, this is where the confusion is, and you're an expert. I know quite a bit about firearms, too. There's even confusion amongst us of whether it will be or not. And the capability, I think, is the key language. And if something's capable in the future of being deemed a certain way, this is, again, affecting firearms and hunters across this country. So another firearm to ask you about, the Ruger PC Carbine Takedown hunting rifle, will it be included if legislation C-21 and proposed amendments passes? Yes or no?
First of all, I wouldn't characterize the PC Carbine as a hunting rifle. The PC, my recollection is it stands for Police Carbine. It's a small semi-automatic carbine that has a standard magazine size, I believe, of just under 20 cartridges, 17 perhaps. I'd have to look up to be sure. But as such, it would meet the evergreening definition in that it is semi-automatic. It fires a center fire cartridge. It has a detachable magazine, and the capacity of that magazine exceeds 5 shots. So that firearm would be captured by that definition if it were to come into force.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Let's go on to the HOA 1500 Hogue bolt-action rifle, hunting rifle. Will that particular firearm, if C-21 passes with associated amendments, will it be prohibited?
It could be prohibited if it's in a caliber large enough to exceed 10,000 joules, but I think the likelihood of it for that particular firearm is limited, so probably not, but it could be, but only in the offending calibers.
It is on the G46. I know we're talking about G4 and G46 is out there, but it's on there.
And so, to the extent that it's on, it would only be where it's chambered for the high energy cartridges. I believe you'd find it if it's listed. It would be in paragraph 95.
Okay.
That's been there since May of 2020. There's no change in what's before the committee today.
Okay. How about the Weatherby Mark 1, 2, or 5 hunting rifle? A very common hunting rifle in Canada. We spoke with Weatherby yesterday. There's been 1,000 that have just been ordered by hunters this year and distributed amongst retailers. Will those be prohibited if C-21 legislation and associated amendments pass?
The Weatherby Mark V is available in a high energy caliber, known as 460 Weatherby Magnum. So Weatherby rifles chambered for that caliber would be prohibited because the energy exceeds 10,000 joules. However, Weatherby offers the firearms in a wide variety of calibers, most of which are below the 10,000 joule threshold, and those would have the same classification as they do today, which is typically non-restricted.
And I guess I'll bring this up once again, is the concern out in the firearms community and the hunting community and hunters across Canada is that will it be somehow associated based on that it's a variant of the particular caliber that you mentioned, and by being a variant, will it be included? And I guess that isn't clear, and that's why we're getting so many questions about it.
Yes, well, the prohibited versions of the Weatherby Mark V would be that way because they're chambered for a high energy caliber, and paragraph 95 applies, and paragraph 95 does not follow the same conventions as the other paragraphs in the regulations. There is no variant or modified version clause in that paragraph, so there is no question of any future variants whatsoever.
So I guess back to the original question, that is the Mark I, II, or V hunting rifle on the prohibited list, and you've answered yes.
Yes, the Weatherby rifles would be prohibited only if they happen to be chambered for a caliber that exceeds 10,000 joules of energy.
Okay, another question on a competition rifle. The FNAR Competition 308 rifle. It's a semi-automatic. It's chambered in centerfire calibers. Will this particular firearm be included in the prohibition list if C-21 and associated amendments pass?
Yeah, so that's a firearm that is a blend of the FN FAL and AK-47. It's not explicitly on any of the older lists, the Schedule 1. I would have to check to see if it's on Schedule 2. Just
and just to clarify too, Mr. Smith, this is in reference to paragraph G in G4 and falls under that definition by just observation?
Oh, yes, it would fall within the bounds of that particular definition because it is a rifle. It is semi-automatic. It fires a centerfire cartridge, and it has a detachable magazine, and the magazine size is vary up to about 30 shots. So yes, it would be captured.